Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the technically three-parter, Face the Raven, which is written by Sarah Donald and is directed by Justin Molotovic, if I believe that's how you pronounce it, as well as the follow-up episodes Heaven Sent and Hell Bent, written by Stephen Moffat and is directed by Rachel Talalay, who previously who that Tal Combo previously wrote for the Series 8 finale, Death in Heaven and Dark Water. Now, before I get into all this, a few things to start off with. One is, yes, a new location. Due to my living arrangements, I had to basically get out of the house. So I'm currently recording this in my father's shed. I kind of like it personally. It gives a kind of DIY kind of look, but it's still got the charm, shall I say? The second thing, I didn't really know how to structure this video. Each episode does feel like its own thing, even if it feels like it is part of a story. With Face the Raven being written and directed by a completely different crew, but it leads on a cliffhanger, which then leads into Heaven Sent. Heaven Sent also feels like its own thing, and it's very structured in a way where it's mainly supposed to be enjoyed on its own. However, in terms of the narrative, it does follow on from Face the Raven, and the storylines do continue on from Hell Bent. And Hell Bent, like I said, feels like its own standard thing, this big, massive epic of a finale. But it follows on from the two storylines from the previous two episodes. And a part of me did want to really talk about them individually, because I feel like these stories, these episodes, do have a sort of substance to them, which they don't have usually in a single part episodes. However, I have decided to edit this down. I don't know what I'm on about. Did decide to put this into one video, maybe two, depending on how long this video goes. Because I feel like maybe for a certain one episode, I don't think there'll be enough to talk about. But I feel like the contrast of each episode I found very particularly interesting. So with that out of the way, let's get on to Face the Raven. Face the Raven starts off with the Doctor and Clara. They are having these kind of adventures, and it does play into the Series 9 themes. The main important one of Series 9 is the involvement of Clara and her basically having the Doctor as a sort of bad influence on her, and that she is slowly becoming becoming like the Doctor. Somebody who takes a lot of risks and enjoys it, has basically an adrenaline junkie. As they get this kind of bomby dialogue of them really just bursting out into adventure until they get a mysterious phone call, which turns out to be Riggsy, a character played by Jovan Wade, who had previously appeared in Flatline. This would be his second and last appearance in the series. Very strange character to bring in, and that's something that we will talk about as the video develops. Is the strangeness of this particular episode is just very strange. We bring back Riggsy, a character from the Doctor Light episode from Series 8. An episode which I'd like to add is one episode that a lot of people thought they were going to hate and then turned out absolutely loved. So the fact that they brought Riggsy into that means that people have more reasons to watch Flatline, which is always a good thing. Watch my video about Flatline if you want to know more. And basically, he has learned that he's got this tattoo on the back of his neck, but it's counting down. It's a number system, and it seems to be counting down to something. And there's this danger, there's this urgency within the narrative straight away. This actually is a great way of setting up a plot line. It's high as the stakes. We don't know what this is at the moment. It's part of the mystery. And it also leads into this weird, strange plot line about Trap Street and how they and then we get to learn about this basically a refugee camp for aliens on Earth, led by Lady Me, aka a shielder, played by Maisie Williams, who reprises her role from previously on in the same series, Series 9, the girl who died and the woman who lived. If you want to know my opinions on those stories, you can watch my video on them too, if you're interested. And she basically has this kind of authority in this street, where she has this ability. She's gained this ability called the Shade, where basically she has this tattoo, and she can basically pass on a counting system onto a person, and it basically seals their fate. She can remove it unless that person decides to pass it on to someone else. However, when the death basically occurs, what happens is when the number counts down to 0, a raven comes down and crashes into the person's chest, killing them. This is a very unique plot line and a unique ability, which I actually really like for the character of a shielder. But here's the thing about this story. This story is both incredibly strangely structured. There's a lot of scenes that kind of stick out in my memory in terms of just oddly paced the story is. Let's go back to that counting system I was talking about earlier and how it introduces a quick threat into the narrative. But it doesn't actually, because the first thing the Doctor does is mention about this whole trap street. I don't know how he gets to the conclusion of the trap street. There is this mention that Rigsy had forgotten his memory. There's also a bit detail about him being a father, which, like, there was no any relationship within Flatline, so that kind of does feel like out of place, or at least short balance. If this maybe was aired like a season after, so it was like 2 years between the stories, then that might have been felt fine. But yeah, but then it's time travel. It doesn't really matter in the whole scheme of things. But there's this urgency, and the story kind of lingers on it. The Doctor, the first thing he does is take the TARDIS to a library, and he basically goes into this detail about trap streets and how there's streets on the maps which sometimes don't appear in real life, and Clara relates it to the real life ideology of trap streets, the idea of people putting fake streets on maps to basically try to stop copyright, back when maps were a very popular form of art, science, I don't know. But this little scene, this little detail about them finding about the trap street and the Doctor taking them there to the library goes nowhere, because in the very next, right at the end of that scene, the Doctor then claims, "I know exactly what we're looking for, and we will not find it here." Why did they go to the library? The scene then after has the Doctor using Clara basically to hang at the edge of the floor on the TARDIS, using the sonic sunglasses to look out in the street and using her eyes to monitor the street. And though there's supposed to be this urgency here, there's something wrong with the script, because Clara, with this whole adrenaline junkie thing, they basically do a reference to Dave the Doctor, where the Doctor basically falls out the TARDIS, with Clara kind of hanging off the TARDIS. I don't know how her body kind of sustains that. She kind of just waves her arms and is giggling to herself. You don't really feel that threat. You don't really feel that countdown in the first half of the story, and it's really, really strange. And there's also some really strange moments where they go around in the city. By the way, the story is set in London, but as somebody who is from Wales, it's so clearly Cardiff. Like, I've seen the streets that they filmed this episode. I've walked around those streets multiple times, like a year, and it's just really, really strange to see them. So, like, it's like, right, we got to look around all over London. Get over there, London. Don't let a single bit of London be unseen. And, like, it's so clearly Cardiff. It's just really, really, really strange. There's also, like, these strange little dialogues where the Doctor's counting his footsteps, and then he tells a kid to not forget 82, which feels like it's kind of a Chekhov's gun. For those of you who don't know, Chekhov's gun is the idea that you set up something in Act 1 of a story, a small little detail, which will then pay off later on in the story. However, that 82 reference is just a really strange, odd scene where the Doctor ties the shoelace of a random kid. It seems really odd and really strange, and it doesn't make a lick of predicament. However, we do get into the trap seat, and I will admit that the set design on the trap seat is absolutely gorgeous. And I do like the almost Harry Potter. I can't remember the street that it's called, but there's a street in Harry Potter it's supposed to be a reference to, and this is the refugee camp that Lady Me, a shielder, looks after. And in terms of world building, it's a really cool set. However, the story I don't think really delves into it. Basically, the idea is that these refugees, they find themselves in this place, and we see these aliens that take the form of humans due to a chameleon circuit. Basically, it's the BBC trying to save money by not showing all of these expensive costumes. However, they do sometimes show their appearance, and I wouldn't mind it as much, but the aliens they decide to use Sontarans and Cybermen? Why would Sontarans and Cybermen be refugees? Okay, maybe you can explain the Sontarans, because you do have some oddball ones like Strax. But a Cyberman? A refugee Cyberman? Also as well is the strange just casting of the story. We have Simon Day, who previously appeared as the Steward in The End of Time, the End of the World from Series 1, to becoming this character, like kind of werewolf alien, takes the form of a human, so we don't really see it that much. It's really cool to see him in it, and you wouldn't recognize him. But there's also Robinson Snona. I'm sorry if I've completely butchered his name. He also he previously appeared as one of the Trakans from the Keeper of Traken. Why couldn't they not get anyone out? Like it does highlight the joke that Britain is only made up of a few actors on the planet. It's just really, really strange to see. But there's this mystery, and they've got to basically these refugees basically believe that Rigsy accidentally found himself on this street and is believed to have killed this woman that they found him with this body on the floor. This woman who has her species, basically they have two heads. One can see in the past. The back of the head sees the past, and the front face can see the future. And the female of this race are telepathic. They can see into the future and they can see in the past. I don't know how it works in terms of like the present day. I don't know how that works. But basically, there's this whole mystery going on. And it's a really great mystery in terms of the setup, in terms of the ideology of it. But because this is only part one of a bigger mystery, it doesn't really lead to anywhere interesting. More of just a setup for the bigger story. Now, the strange thing about Face the Raven, for me personally, is that there's so many weird scenes. There's so many weird little details like this. This is the first Doctor Who story that has the written language of Star Wars in it. There's a blueprint in the back of one of the streets where it has this symbol of a DeLorean engine, and it says in the Star Wars language DeLorean. So that's just a really cool Easter egg. There's so many like strange, weird moments, both a positive and negative. Mostly negative, if I'm going to be honest, until the very end of the act. But in terms of quality, not in terms of like, you know, just the ideas and the premise and the concepts and the things the story's dealing with, but in terms of just quality of the episode, it's run of the mill until the very end, until the final act. The story runs at a 5 out of 10 if I was doing markings like that. But it's just so. I was never truly engaged with it, and I was never truly bored by it either. It's very strange. It's very hard to put down. It's very frustrating as somebody who makes videos to try and describe that feeling. But it's true. There's substance there. There's stuff to latch on to there, but it's not enough to fill anything. It's really strange and it's really bizarre. But this episode mainly leads into the finale of its episode, where Clara basically has a brilliant idea. Basically, she learns throughout the story where we see somebody getting killed by the Shay, the tattoo device, that you can pass on the curse, shall we say. And Clara comes up with the idea because the lady Mia Ashilda basically promised the doctor that Clara will not be harmed. So she asked Rigsy to pass the tattoo onto her. And they have a debate about it, but she basically is like, right, this is strategy. This is like thinking like the doctor. This is me being smart. We won't tell him. We'll try and keep it secret. You know, he probably like have a fit, have a rage, me taking risks all the time. But, you know, it'll be fine. You know, I've got it all worked out. And by the end of the episode, we essentially learn that this was a trap. Rigsy, when he originally arrived near the dead body, he was basically calling for the doctor. Ashila, basically putting two and two together, basically made this mystery that Rigsy killed this person. He had this tattoo. He had no memory. He's going to call up his friend, the doctor, and he will track down and find his trap suit and try and build up his mystery on who killed this woman. We also learn that the woman isn't actually dead. This is just a whole conspiracy. And whoever is concealing this, whoever is making Ashilda do this, wants the doctor's key, presumably. And the doctor puts his key in the device and it puts a chain over his arm. Basically completing what Ashilda needed to do, promised by a mysterious force. And when that's out of the way, she's like, right, I am reasonable. I am perfectly a responsible person. So I'll take the curse off Rigsy, only now to be revealed that Clara had it. However, when Clara did it, it took the Ashilda out of the deal. Now, that is actually a really, really great premise. And basically, it leads to Clara leading up her death. And the final act of this episode is so gorgeous. And it basically makes up Clara throughout the entire series and basically has her storyline fulfilled to a great achievement, where she basically accepts her fate of her death and is like, right, I've taken one risk too far. There is now, and it's her last speech isn't really about herself. I mean, she does click and it's like, right, maybe I can be now with Danny in heaven, and I can, you know, I was just leading up to this. I was taking all those stupid risks so I can end up here and I can be with Danny in the afterlife or something. But then she uses that most of the time to try and comfort the Doctor. I really love the idea of the 12th Doctor, the Doctor who isn't as emotionally stable as his predecessors. He just wails at Ashilda. I love the line where the Doctor's like, right, I'll send in like an entire army towards you. And she's like, no, you won't do that. The Doctor, everybody knows the Doctor will not do that. And he just shouts at her, the Doctor isn't here now. You are stuck with me. Fantastic line. And Peter Capaldi, Jenna Louise Coleman, absolutely nail it. Leading into the finale scene where Clara, she basically faces the Raven, which for those of you who don't know is an Edgar Allan Poe reference. And she gets killed by the creature, and the Doctor is then teleported to an unknown, mysterious place leading into Heaven Sent. So, yeah, Face the Raven isn't a particularly strong episode. It isn't a particularly great episode until the very end. It just basically runs, it's just run of the mill. But now we go to Heaven Sent. Oh boy, this story is it basically is set in this castle, and it is a allegory for grief, as the Doctor is processing his emotions, and he's basically locked in his castle with himself and this creature which was known as the Veil, which is from the Doctor's past. It's a old lady, that corpse that the Doctor knew, and has like a terrifying memory as a kid of this old woman dying in the Vale, and it's chasing him around, and it seems to only stop when the Doctor tells truths. And the story goes at a slow pace, but it's that gorgeous pace where every single moment is something going along. Stephen Moffat's writing here is absolutely gorgeous. He absolutely nails the 12th Doctor here. Somebody who, he has this driven force about him to stop evil, even if that force might not actually be for the best. Here he's essentially wants to find out who is this, what's happening, out of revenge, out of spite, out of trying to achieve Clara's name. But he's basically locked in a place where he can't really fight. He has to just run away and do nothing, essentially, and just kind of survive in this castle that moves around and changes, and there's little clues onto what's happening as he meets this. He sees a skull. He slowly clicks together about the whole truth thing. He also sees later on, the word bird written in like what appears to be sand on the floor, as well as at one point he dives out of the window, falls into water. There's something else I need to talk about before that. And then he gets out and his clothes are wet. He comes into a fireplace and he sees a duplicate of his exact clothes, seemingly all warm and dry. And the Doctor then replaces his clothes with the new clothes, and then he puts his old clothes there to dry. Kind of like a repeating cycle, this kind of haunting atmosphere. Now, Rachel Talalay is a great director, but here it's like an absolute standout. This episode is probably one of the best looking episodes of the entire series. And not only that, not only does it look good, but it's narratively driven as well, making it the best of both worlds. It's a great directed story in terms of just purely gorgeous looking episode to look at, and it's also a narratively driven piece of drama that just, it's just so good. I know I'm probably beating around the bush because so many people have talked about it. I could just recommend you great videos talking about Heaven Sent, like He Who Moans. Mr. TARDIS has done 2 just absolutely phenomenal videos. If you haven't seen his one where he just talks about just the directing of this story, highly recommend it. I'll put it in the description below if you are interested in that. So I'm not going to try and beat around the bush because it's just such a great episode, and basically the Doctor is basically forced to not do anything, and he's basically stuck in the mind process of him missing Clara. And there's a great moment where he says, what's the line? When you lose someone, that's not the worst day. It's every other day where they're gone, when you're expecting them to come back and they never do. Brilliant dialogue. However, like with Face the Raven, there are some weird moments which I'm not too sure about how I feel. And yeah, we're going to have to go back to him jumping out the window. I'm going to talk about basically the Mind Palace scenes. Essentially, there are scenes where the Doctor seemingly has escaped his predicament and gets into the TARDIS and is just like talking to himself. It's like, haha, I'm amazing, Clara. How do you want to know how I escaped? And it's basically revealed that this is actually him in his mind trying to process information in the current situation. Basically, he slowed his mind down, like he slowed down time mentally, so that he can figure out much more complicated systems, like how much, particularly in this window, trying to work out what time did he need to basically dive down into the water, because you put your arms and legs to try and slow yourself down, and then put yourself arching so that you fall into the water at a perfect place so that you don't injure yourself. And For those of you who might not realise, this is a callback to actually Stephen Moffat's other big project at the time, Sherlock, a modern adaptation of Sherlock Holmes. And one of the big features of that story is the Mind Palace, where Sherlock Holmes would basically conceive things with his imagination, and he would go into like his head, and he would have human constructs repeating phrases that he'd heard earlier on, and he basically will work things in this basically virtual mental reality of sorts. Is that how you describe it? I don't know. I think it does harm me as a viewer personally, but I do know the Sherlock reference, and it does kind of just feel like Stephen Moffat is just taking the Sherlock and just putting it into Doctor Who. But I do understand as well that if you haven't seen Sherlock, that might actually have fitted into the story, into the narrative. It just feels really strange, and it does seem like just to get the TARDIS set used in the story, which, by the way, Heaven Sent does not feature the TARDIS in any way, shape, or form. Very interesting. This all culminates in probably, in my opinion, the best Doctor Who scene of all time. Counting every scene, right back to 1969 to the present day, as time as I'm recording this. It is my favourite scene of Doctor Who of all time, where the Doctor has basically come to this fort, a diamond wall, and he basically thinks that the TARDIS is on the other side, and he thinks that if he just says his final truth about him knowing about what the hybrid is and what exactly the hybrid is in detail, it would stop all this, and his his captures would let him free. And the whole thing with Clara, and he's basically, he feels like he's already lost, so he's like, he is tempted, but he isn't. So what he decides to do is just start smashing into the diamond wall, giving off only a tiny, almost like fraction of the wall, until the veil gets him, burns him to a crisp, and he's slowly dying with his last energy. Goes up to the teleporting machine, repowers it, activates it, using its memory banks to basically produce another Doctor, killing this version of the Doctor. And the story repeats. And this is just a masterclass in editing, writing, directing, music. Shepherd's Boy by Murray Gold. Oh my god! Probably one of the best tracks that Murray Gold has ever produced. Let's be honest. Probably under I Am the Doctor and The Rings of Akaten, the long song. But I'm getting my head myself. Yeah, it's just, I can't describe it. It's just so good. Just go watch it. It is phenomenal. It is it's just, I can't tell you how amazing it is. Like, I feel like I'm not equipped, not educated enough to tell you how I can possibly feel about it and try and translate it in a video like this. So you don't have to take my word for it. Just go watch it. Just go watch it. This all leads into the finale scene where the Doctor finds himself on Gallifrey, and he basically claims that the hybrid, the creature that Series 9 has been teasing since the Witches, the Magician's Apprentice and the Witch's Familiar, my apologies. This creature of Time Lord mythology that the Time Lords feared, this creature that would be two warrior races and will either control or doom Gallifrey to its fate. The Doctor proclaims the hybrid is me, which, I mean, the way it's worded, the way it's described, it does kind of feel like he's talking about me as in a shielder. And if that's the case, it's really, really, really dumb. And then we get into Hellbent. Now, this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about the story as a collective, because these 3 episodes do what I think is something very unique. We go from a completely average episode in terms of quality to probably one of the best written episodes of the entire series, with some of the scenes which are the best written scenes and best edited and directed scenes in the entire show's history, and probably some of my favorite piece of video clip I've ever seen in my entire life. Not even a joke. To Hell's Bent, which I know not a lot of people have opinions, I know a lot of people who are very strong about the story and or don't like the story, it's totally up to you. But for me, personally, this is my least favourite Doctor Who story of all time. I don't want to say it ruins the canon, but it does, I think, harm the Doctor's character to a degree. Where the story starts off with the Doctor, he goes to this cafe and he meets Clara. And they act like they don't know each other, though the Doctor does mention a Clara. And he basically goes into this story about how he's going to save this woman. So seemingly Clara has forgotten who the Doctor is, and the Doctor is basically trying to be kind to this person that has lost her memory of their travels. And it basically leads into the story. Then, for some reason, it goes to the bar from Dave the Doctor. And there's this woman which may or may not be the Doctor's mother, as Stephen Moffat has described, which again may or may not be the woman from the end of time. We also get some really nice recurring characters. Well, I say recurring character. Yeah, returning characters. As we have Ken Bones reprising his role from the Doctor as the General. He would later go on to reprise the character in the eighth Doctor audio dramas, as well as the War Doctor Begins box sets, which at this moment in time I haven't seen them, but I'm really looking forward to the War Doctor ones. But anyway, I digress. We also have Claire Higgins reprising as Olia. I've forgotten how to pronounce her name. A character who previously appeared in the short mini episode on the website, Night of the Doctor, with Paul McGann, and as well as has also appeared with the 12th Doctor with Peter Capaldi in one of the prequels for The Magician's Apprentice. This would make her first true appearance in the show itself, so that's kind of cool. I really do like Claire Higgins and her very straight-faced attitudes to the 12th Doctor, almost as if she's like his carer of sorts, because there's at one point where he's like, "You come out here, boy," and the Doctor basically interacts with this character. Appears to be Rassilon. He's named Rassilon. He's called Rassilon, and he takes the form of Rassilon. He's played by Donald Sumpeller. Again, I'm really butchering his names. I really do apologise, but this is such a down. One of the big failures of the story is how Rassilon is portrayed. Let's go back to how he was originally portrayed within the Five Doctors. He was this character, he was a very mysterious character. He might have been a great hero to Time Lord mythology, or he could be the secret dictator that has controlled Time Lord history since his rule. And it's all left up to mystery. Then we go into the end of time, when Rassilon reappears, and he's just this really shouting bad guy, brilliantly portrayed by what's his name, the James Bond actor Timothy Dalton. Though he has this presence, he stands on this kind of theatre-like presence all the time. And he has this booming voice, and everybody listens to him. And then here, Rassilon just kind of shouts as if he's like a child of sorts to his generals, to his councilmen, and all that threat that the Timothy Dalton incarnation, all that mystery, all that eerie mythologic version of him from the Five Doctors is now completely gone, and he's just a raging, dictatorishly madman. A character which Rassilon, one of the biggest iconic figures in Time Lord history, one of the most, one of the big mythologic characters in Doctor Who history, one of the big canon fodders of the show. He gets defeated, like the Doctor, kind of puts a line down. He has this kind of debate with him, which gets all the soldiers to turn against Rassilon, and Doctor basically exiles him off Gallifrey, and then he's never seen again in the episode. He's not even the main villain. What a waste of a character! And we slowly learn that, well, we kind of learned in Heaven Sent, but it's kind of here where it kind of sinks in, this is what I'm trying to say about hurts the canon on the show, where the Doctor didn't leave Gallifrey because he wanted to see adventure. He didn't want to, he didn't leave Gallifrey for a mysterious previously mysterious purposes. He ran away of Gallifrey because he was scared that the prophecy of the hybrid, a plotline which was introduced in this series, in Series 9. What? Sorry. No. That's just one of the big factors about what makes the Doctor such an interesting character is the mystery of who he is. I mean, though it is hinted, he's because he loved it. Eventually, he got bored of the place. There was always a kind of a mystery feeling, and even still, that thrill for adventure, that drive to go and see out the universe, was always a big part of the character. Not anymore, according to this story. It was because he was scared of the hybrid. It's not funny, and it's incredibly frustrating to say. And it's just so many dumb, boring, bland scenes, and we get to learn about these wraiths in this kind of underbelly of Gallifrey, where it's like the memory bank of the Matrix, which is a reference to Trial of the Time Lord, the Deadly Assassins. I believe it's Arc of Infinity as well. I could be mistaken on that. The Five Doctors, does it mention the Matrix in that? I can't remember. But anyway, I digress. And they have all of these alien creatures. They have Daleks, they have Cybermen, they have Weeping Angels, which don't seem like they would have any place. That scene just is also really poorly directed, and it makes you feel like it's in like a carnival scene. And it's written by and directed by the same people who've written Heaven Sent literally an episode ago, which was one of the best things I've ever seen. Now going to run of this, which was so poorly executed. And we also learn that the Doctor basically took over Gallifrey. He took over Gallifrey of Rassilon. He came back just so he can... he literally has spent all of Series 1 to Series 6... talking about Series 7, talking all about Gallifrey and how much he misses it, and the pain and suffering of him losing his entire people during the war. And then Day of the Doctor happens, and his people are alive, they're out somewhere, and part of his journey is that he's going to find his people, he's going to find them, and he's going to be reunited with his people. And now he finally has been put together with his people. And all he does is use their machine to bring back Clara, which, by the way, not only ruins her death scene, but ruins the Doctor's entire story arc in the previous episode. And the whole, one of the big things about Doctor Who is the whole, you can't change history, not one line, and the dealing of death. I mean, Clara's death is technically the first on-screen death since Adric, and Adric's death was Katrina before him, permanent, and it's one of the big dealing factors of Doctor Who. You can't change back history, you can't fix things. It's what Father's Day was about from Series 1. It's one of the big defining factors, and the Doctor just kind of defeats the whole purpose. Something he should know he shouldn't be allowed to do. So something which the story constantly tells you will break the fabric of reality. And the Doctor has no consequences for this. He mentions, yes, he knows he's gone too far, but we never see the universe break down. We never see the universe have any repercussions for Clara being alive. The Doctor kind of just tries to cheat out of learning a lesson of that, people die, and sometimes you just got to accept it, and, you go grow from that pain, that suffering. And he kind of just completely dodges it and gets away with it. This makes the Doctor, by the end of the story, Though something does happen, it kind of, which I think Stephen Moffat thinks tries to fix it, but in my opinion, it doesn't. Really hurts the Doctor's character and makes him not unlikable, but kind of an unrelenting, like a hero, which I don't really root for in this story. You know, I kind of understand, like, if like the story was him relearning what he was essentially learning in Heaven Sent, that, you know, this pain and the suffering, and he maybe, like, the story has a great ending written for itself, where Doctor and Clara basically have to say goodbye again, and the Doctor, like, he can't take it, but like he may have to, like, even try to push Clara into that situation. But no, it's Clara's choice that she wants to go back, and the Doctor doesn't. And there's this whole thing where he goes to the distant future. He basically goes to the end of time, and he meets with a Shielder again, and they discuss about what the hybrid is, with the theories being that the Doctor thinks it's her, which is a reference to the hybrid is me thing, and a Shielder believes that the Doctor is at least part of the hybrid, and actually mentions the Doctor is half human, which is a continuity point from the TV movie, a fact that Russell T Davies kind of just completely blanked out. And it's really strange that it just comes up here out of nowhere. And it's like brought up, and the Doctor kind of like misheartens, like, oh yeah, so that's it. Do you think the hybrid's me? And she's like, no, I got a better theory. So they brought up the Doctor could be half human, but like just left it up in the air. It's very strange. But this basically all leads up to a scene where the Doctor, he claims that he knows he's doing it wrong. He doesn't send Clara back to her death and, you know, relights the time, sends her back to her death, or, you know, tries to fix the universe or anything. He basically tries to stop the Time Lords from searching from her by erasing her memory of the Doctor and then sending her back to modern day Earth. Like, I don't think that's how tracking works, Doctor. If I forget that, like, the FBI are looking for me, then the FBI are not going to just stop looking for me. Like, I don't understand what the whole concept is here. This leads into a scene where Clara, she tries to trigger with a device, and the Doctor and Clara basically Russian roulette that they press on this device, and it will erase one of their memories, somehow fixing the issue of her now being alive when she should have been dead. And the Russian roulette takes a heavy toll on the Doctor, and it turns out the Doctor is the one who's going to lose all of his memories about Clara, leading into the final scene where the set of the story, the Doctor meeting Clara in the canteen, in the restaurant, which, by the way, the restaurant is not only a place in Cardiff, which I've actually been to. They sell some really nice, like, American burgers in there, really nice. But it's the same set that they use, and it's also referenced in this story as well. At least it's supposed to be similar to the restaurant in The Impossible Astronaut and The Day of the Moon. Why bring that? Why have that? I don't understand it. And it turns out as well that this diner is actually Clara's new TARDIS. Also, I completely forgot to mention, in this story, the Doctor steals another TARDIS in Gallifrey, runs away as soon as he arrives on Gallifrey, really dumb. But the TARDIS is a TARDIS based on the 60s design in the interior. It is absolutely gorgeous. I will admit, I had goosebumps just seeing a modern day Doctor and a companion in a classic TARDIS. It's really gorgeous. Yeah, that was pretty cool. That did really put a grin on my face. And this all then leads into a scene where the Doctor's like, right, I'm going to find Clara. I'm sure I'll know her when I see her. And the story basically ends with the Doctor going into his TARDIS after seeing this painting of Clara by Rigsy, which is at the post-credit scene. Face or even has a post-credit scene when Rigsy puts a painting on the TARDIS. And the Doctor goes into his TARDIS and he gets a new blue sonic screwdriver. And that's the end of Heaven Sent. probably the worst Doctor Who story that I've ever witnessed anyway, and is my least favourite Doctor Who episode ever. But this all culminates in a three-parter which has the most average episode in terms of quality, the best episode in terms of quality, and in my opinion, the worst episode in terms of quality, in terms of the main show anyway. Of course, if you add in like fan productions, then it's probably something from there. But yeah, it's just so bizarre that these three episodes were back to back to back, and Heaven Sent and Hell Bent are by the same people, same director and same writers. It's phenomenal how this is even a thing. It's how? It blows my brain. It absolutely blows my brain. I don't understand it at all. But yeah, that is Face the Raven, Hellbent, and Heaven Sent. I've got the words mixed up. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you liked the new setup as well. I kind of got a DIY thing going on here. I don't know if I said that earlier. So join me next time where we'll be talking about a fan audio drama as the Doctor finds himself on a planet, something to do with the dead, as certain supplies have been exhausted. And the Doctor meets up with a familiar face, the face of his previous self. So join me next time for Exhausted Supplies. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da.